Well, at 9 o'clock tonight, Sky News is going to be showing a special programme examining the deep divides in the country after this EU referendum, with clear splits in opinion between the young and the old, the left and the right, and the north and the south. Nation Divided will be examining why our place in the EU is a subject that the UK just cannot agree on. Well, to discuss this divide further, I'm joined now by the Director of the Institute of Ideas, Claire Fox, and Director of Progress, Richard Angle. Thank you both very much for joining us. Claire, I'll come to you first. We've just been hearing from Nigel Farage there, stepping down as leader of UKIP. Resignations left, right and centre. We've only got a couple more to get a full house, I think. It seems that not just politics is divided, but the nation as a whole. Splits everywhere you look.
Well, I don't know that we could say that Farage resigning is a split. I do think what this indicates is that the Brexit vote has really shaken things up. And actually, that's what you'd expect. I mean, change has happened. The vote to remain would have been a kind of go back in your box, status quo, quelled all of the kind of anxieties. But this has revealed the reality of society, which is that people want change. There is a mood in the air that present political arrangements are not good enough, not sufficient for people. 17.5 million people voted in defiance of an establishment that really did line up against them and tell them what to do. So I actually think the possibilities, the crackling positive possibilities of change are what we should see in this, rather than being overly doom-ridden or pessimistic.
Well, Claire, I do wonder what people who voted for Brexit think of key leaders like Nigel Farage saying, I've done my bit, we're out of the EU, and now I'm out of it as well. Will they feel let down?
Well, I don't think he did say that, did he? I mean, I think the great letdown was David Cameron's resignation, which I do feel was an act of cowardice and petulance. However, I think that, I mean, I'm not interested particularly in UKIP, and he certainly doesn't represent all people who voted Leave. But nonetheless, he actually made a different point, I think, which is that he personally was going. He also made the point that there are those people in the Leave camp, whether that's UKIP and anyone else, and I'm one of those people, who will make sure that Brexit really happens. I mean, what's been most distressing is that the anti-democratic, the swathes of contempt for democracy that have come from people that post the vote have said, we will do whatever we can to subvert it. You know, there's people talking about legal challenges, people going on demonstrations saying, we don't want this vote to go through, people setting up change.org petitions, all of this. And what they're basically saying is popular will, popular sovereignty, as exerted in a referendum, is going to be snubbed and treated with contempt.
Richard,
and I think that is something that we have to be very careful of, because that will actually divide the country.
Yeah, Richard, I'll pick up on that point by Claire. This was an argument that was kicked around at the weekend. Tony Blair speaking to Sky News saying that he stopped short of saying there should be a second referendum, but he was saying it's okay to change your mind. Essentially, those that had voted for Brexit, the arguments that they voted for are falling apart.
Well, look, I think the country voted to leave, and leave we must, but the start of that progress will be triggering Article 50, and we go into a 2-year and prolonged negotiation. We don't really know what we'll be coming back with that negotiation. You know, people never outlined what Brexit would look like, and what we're finding is that what was accused on the Remain side of being Project Fear now looks like Project Understatement. We're seeing huge problems with our pound. It's at its lowest level since 1985. I was one then. That's a while ago, and a big problem for us. You know, the FTSE down and real problems in our economy, and that will be a price that is paid by many of those people who voted to leave. But what they will see today is the tax cut is coming for people at the top of society in what George Osborne's proposing, and I think that division will continue from that point onwards.
We talk about divided Britain, Richard, and we have this programme on tonight at 9 o'clock exploring the different regions of the country and where their battle lines are drawn, different ages, different ethnicities. Where for you are the big divides in this country, the key points that people are essentially going to battle on, really?
Well, obviously, the fact that it was 52-48 means it was a close call, and the country's literally riven down the middle. But the bit that will go on is the fact that it's generationally divided. Essentially, our grandparents voted for us to come out, and that, I think, will be something that continues to fester in society and will mean that people will kind of constantly be looking for a better future. And I think that's going to be one of the reasons why people are saying not necessarily that they want a second referendum or that they want the vote to be ignored, but they want to know what this future that other people have decided for them is about to look like, and what real reassurance is that, you know, a majority of people in work voted to remain, but the biggest thing at risk is workers' rights. So it's not wrong that people might want reassurance that some of the things they've taken for granted, maternity leave, paternity leave, all the other rights that we got through Europe and a Labour government, might be at risk now and would want them still in place.
Claire, it was quite interesting. We were speaking to our correspondent Sam Kiley, who's put tonight's documentary together, and he was speaking to those who voted Brexit, who are from disadvantaged backgrounds, who are perhaps out of work. And they were saying to him that even though the path of leaving the EU throws up a lot of unknowns, they were willing to take the hit and be harder hit than they already are, because at the moment, the current system of being in the EU just simply isn't working. They were more than willing to take that risk.
Exactly. I mean, there is a real sort of patronising aspect to some of the debate that assumes that the people who voted Brexit did not understand the risks. Goodness knows, Project Fear told them often enough. And it wasn't that they were duped, it was that people took a decision to be brave, to look those risks in the eye and say that the present status quo wasn't good enough. And I think we have to be very careful about, as I think Richard is in danger of doing, of talking up the divisions. There was a huge number of people who voted Remain, of course, millions, but more voted Brexit. And then I think we now can come together. But one of the things we have to be careful about, you know, when we talk about the generational divide, much has been made of this 75% of under 25s voted Remain, and therefore the youth are being betrayed by their grandparents. By the way, with some quite vile and hostile ageist connotations if you look at all the social media and articles that have been written. But then you actually discover that, in fact, only 36% of that age group bothered to vote at all. So I don't think we want to emphasise the divisions. I also think the racial divisions are being overstated and sadly exploited by some people rather opportunistically. The second reason why most people voted Brexit was indeed immigration. Not all of the people who are worried about immigration, not even remotely all of them, are racist. It's horrible to exploit that. Many of them are actually older immigrants themselves concerned about not having control over borders. So, you know, I fear that sometimes some of the bitter, you know, kind of bad faith objection to the fact that they lost a vote from some people in the Remain camp, not all, of course, is to actually try and make Britain even more divided. This indicates that a society wanted a change. Huge swathes are alienated from and acted in defiance of a very narrow political elite that told them what to do. And they didn't do what they were told. And it seems that some of the political class are annoyed with that. But, you know, we the people have spoken, and now we have to maturely, all of us, Remain and Brexit, get together and work out the great, wonderful possibilities that we can now plan in our future. Negotiations must start now. We've got 2 years to negotiate great settlement, and life will go on.
Keep calm and carry on,
Hopefully
says
better.
Claire. Richard, do you agree with her in terms of perhaps we are talking up these divisions? Everybody has their concerns, it's up to the individual, but are there really these divisions that cannot be healed in this country?
But Claire, I'm sure you would agree that what we expect at minimum is the people who argued for Brexit should be saying to those in this country that aren't originally from this country, you are still welcome here, you should continue to go to work, you continue to play your role in British civil society, and you are very, very welcome. And we haven't seen that categorically from the government or from the leading figures of the Brexit case, that those people are welcome here. And we are seeing Polish community centres graffitied, people being victims of racism, and this is not right, acceptable. I don't think it was what most people who voted to leave wanted, but the people who most vocally argued for us to leave should be most vocal in saying this isn't the Britain that we want, and they must play their role to bring people together. But instead, Boris seems to be leaving the stage, and so does Nigel Farage, and this is a real disappointment for people. That if you want to bring people together, that is a role for leaders, and we must see them take their place.
Richard, I think you have to be very careful what you're saying here. Everybody I know, everybody on social media that I follow, all of the people from Leave that I have had any association with have categorically stated that no, of course, repatriation was not part of the deal. We voted to leave the EU. And as you will know, that when that incident happened in relation to the Polish centre in Hammersmith, the Polish centre was also overwhelmingly swamped by support from local people from Hammersmith who voted both Leave and Remain. What my concern is here is that when you say we need reassurances, the people who are saying, oh, it's awful, people are going to be now frightened and kicked out of the country and whipping up the fears, sadly, are often in the Remain camp. I have been involved in anti-racist politics for years. Listen, Richard, you are accusing, exactly. So why don't we all stop trying to turn it into a Brexit Remain thing.
Claire,
we should all say now,
we should all... of those who were leading the Brexit campaign, and that those people haven't shown leadership, and many people are unclear about what their status is and need clear reassurance from every Conservative leader. Nicola Sturgeon yesterday called for that reassurance because she believes it has not been sufficient from not only the government but all the Conservative leadership candidates who will be, whichever one turns out on top, will be the next Prime Minister of this country. And my friend is an employer, and 5 of his staff did not turn up to work on the Friday because they were packing, because they thought they were no longer welcome. And that is not technically right, but that was how they felt about the result. And that is something that all of us must have high regard for.
All of us. Don't politicise it. That's absolutely right.
I'm not trying to politicise it. I'm trying to say...
So stop saying it's the responsibility of the Leave campaign. What I'm saying is it's the responsibility of all of us in... Richard, it's the responsibility of all of us to reassure and calm things down. The point I'm making, actually, the only person at the moment, it seems to me, that is talking about the possibility of that even is one of the candidates who voted for Remain in the campaign anyway. So I'm simply saying, let's take the heat out of this.
OK, I'm going to take the heat out of this because we have run out of time. Claire Fox and Richard Angle, thank you for arguing so passionately about that. We'll all calm down. We'll leave it as contributors divided for the moment.